welcome back. Thank you to Janessa for joining me. We're recording for September and the weekly astro update for you for the 11th to the 18th of September. Thank you, Janessa from By Jove Astrology and the Astro Garden for joining me. How are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here today. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Right. So this is the week ahead that we're going to be looking at, and we're going to be looking from the 11th to the 18th. So just this little part of part one, and that breaks down like this. We're going to be looking at the Sun squaring Jupiter and Venus trining Jupiter, which I think is the one that everybody's looking forward to. All the electional astrologers have picked this date this month, I think. And then we have the first lunar eclipse in Pisces, which is going to be interesting. It's a partial one because the nodes are still in Aries and Libra. They don't move until January, I believe. But we're getting a first taste of what the 2-year transit through Pisces might hold for us. And then we finish up this week with Mercury opposite Saturn. What do you think of how this week is looking, Janessa?
I think this sounds pretty nice after all of the things. Well, okay, maybe not. The eclipse will be a little bit, it's always a kind of a crapshoot with eclipses, but the rest of it sounds good to me. So yeah, I guess I have zero expectations for the eclipse just because it's the first one of this series. So I'm just staying open to that.
Yeah, we'll have to see what it brings. And here we have the overview for the month that we went into more detail on when we looked at in the first 2 episodes. As we said before, we don't see the sun and the moon because we know the sun's in Virgo transiting to Libra. And I think that'll be next week that we'll look at that. But yeah, we can just really see the transit of Mercury going from Leo all the way through Virgo, which we'll be looking at soon, and then into Libra. And we see Mars here moving into Cancer, which has just happened the day before we're recording. So about a week away by the time we release the episode. So the signs that are affected, we can see the energy falling here in Cancer, which is a cardinal sign. And we're still seeing movement in the mutable sign of Gemini. So that then affects Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo. And we see a lot of movement in Virgo into Libra, which is another cardinal sign. So like the Cancer, Libra, Aries, and Capricorn would be affected there. And with the end of Libra, that's the last of the fixed signs getting involved, I think, in the action for now, until we see Venus start moving up into Scorpio. And then the fixed signs are back in action, but they maybe get a little bit of a break for the moment. Would you think?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a break for sure, the fixed signs.
I like Krista's analogy of like the rain is flowing and watering your garden. So if you're teasing your garden, they're going to grow. And if you're neglecting it and it's weedy, they're going to grow too. So it depends on what you're growing in your garden, is sort of metaphorically, I suppose. And it's going to be activated, whether we like it or not. But it's what we're nurturing there.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, I really like it. It looks like raindrops in this vision.
Yeah.
So we can move on to the Jupiter square the Sun. So we see them both at 20 degrees. Jupiter's in Gemini still, where it met with Mars. And the Sun's now in Virgo. And it's like the brakes are off, really. Mercury's starting to leave the shadow. So let me find Sun here in Virgo, which is Mercury's sign. And then Jupiter also in Mercury's sign. So we need to look to Mercury. We find Mercury out of shadow, in his own sign, in his own exaltation, couldn't be in a better place to get his significations done. We know that he's just emerged from a Cazimi. He's like got new instructions from the Sun, a new agenda to carry out. Now these first aspects, we're seeing Jupiter squaring the Sun, and everything that they're doing is informed by this newly energized Mercury, I feel. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I like what you said about the brakes being off. That made me immediately look to Saturn and thinking about how, we're Saturn's still retrograde and it's moving away from being in a tight aspect with Jupiter and the Sun. So it does feel like they have a little more freedom than they've had, or Jupiter especially, to be able to kind of do what they want over there. I guess my eye keeps being drawn to that moon in Capricorn. So it's like a Mercury at the same time, but it's like a verse to Jupiter over there. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like it doesn't have a direct line of sight to what Jupiter wants to do, but it's Mercury has a hold on it, and it's co-present Pluto that's newly retrograded into Capricorn. So it's a little bit more dynamic than it looks on the surface, I think. Maybe some messages coming through. I think Jupiter's sun is really nice in terms of like, your purpose or like spirit and like what you like want to accomplish. And then Mercury's kind of there like hanging out, lending a hand in like the communication department for that.
Yeah.
And maybe translating that moon too to like, at first I was kind of thinking, well, the moon is a verse, but Mercury there is translating it and maybe bringing some stuff into reality with it. And maybe this is a time where those Pluto and Capricorn themes are coming back up and being brought to the surface too.
And whenever we see that moon sort of activated by something, that's going to call back to those 2 Capricorn moons that we had, those degrees. I mean, the moon being opposite Mars there as well.
Yeah, good catch.
Kind of activates, causing that as well. That's a lot of like challenging feelings. Like Mars is in detriment and the moon is in detriment. It's in Cancer. Mars is kind of about the action that we take on emotions and feelings, and then the moon there in Cancer is about how our world building can affect our need for nurturing and care, is how I see it. And then that's, like you say, that's informing Mercury and how that's going to be translated out in the world and how Mercury's going to go forward. And then Mercury is in turn ruling both that Sun and Jupiter, and they're both, really wanting to bring all the good stuff. The Sun's shining this bright light as it does, and it gives life and energy, and Jupiter is a life-giving planet as well. I mean, I've written down like sun-warmed beaches. It makes you think of the great-hearted heroes, like the Apollos, and it made me think of like Sandy's Danny in Greece, that, oh, summer nights. And it's like that illusion of everything being like so great, and then the shadow coming in with these emotions where she finds out actually it wasn't that dream, that summertime romance dream that she first thought, and her hero had clay feet. He needed her to change, and where at first he accepted her totally as she was.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting like major themes too of like maybe like patriarchy or something coming into play with the Jupiter Sun especially, and Pluto again being back in Capricorn, like I don't know, revealing more about that for us as if we needed more unveiled at this point to know. But yeah, I think the Sun Jupiter kind of brings up those like you were saying, like the male leadership figures. I don't know. I mean, it's still in, like, the sun is still in Virgo, which is a, quote unquote feminine sign, or a yin sign. But yeah, I can't help but think of that with that pairing.
Yeah.
Both like kingly or something like that.
Yeah, and of course with the square, it's asking us to take action as well. So
Yeah.
what action is the king going to take? And when we see it squaring Jupiter, okay, something's going to grow or expand, or asking for faith or asking for hope, but it's going to be communicated through that Gemini nature of words, that mercurial action. That's the type of action we're likely to see.
Yep.
And with the sun in practical Virgo as well, it's likely to be a practical, grounded kind of issue that's being highlighted as well. It's like interesting to play it all through and then look back and see what actually happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be interested to see that for sure.
Okay, and then comes the lovely one that everybody's looking for.
No, I think this does look really lovely. I mean, who am I to argue with like the astrology podcast selection? I mean, look, just pointing out high level, we've got Jupiter up on the MC, at the highest point in the chart for all to see, up in Gemini, and then we've got the trine to Venus in the second house. And then it's not by degree, but it's lovely that we have the moon in Aquarius finishing out like a grand air trine if we're just looking by whole sign. So there's kind of like this, trines are like a helpful aspect and one where things flow really nicely. Yeah, this looks like a really nice day, especially being in an air sign for like a party or like any kind of socializing or communication you want to do. I haven't listened to like what they've recommended in the astrology podcast yet or anyone else putting this out there, but yeah, those are really nice places to have this nice flow going between, the greater benefic, the lesser benefic, the moon. It feels like a very light day, there's a lightness to it being all in air signs.
Yeah, I think you could be looking at like, again, because of the Gemini and Libra nature is like relationships and communication within relationships and fairness and balance within relationships, or so things like maybe networking or mutual beneficial relationships, like the kind of work that we're doing together, where we love to astro chat and then we record it and share it with other people, and we hope that it helps other people. It's that kind of energy of like, let's share. We've learned some knowledge, let's share it, and we hope you like it, and if it's Venusian enough, you will, because it's the thoughts and the words. So it sort of feels like this. But got some dates. They met on the 23rd of May at 29 Taurus. And at that time, I was just thinking, where was Uranus then? Uranus was at 23. So, well, obviously, you see Uranus now retrograding back at 27. He's not yet at that dangerous 26 degree. But obviously, in Taurus, it was coloured by that Uranus. I feel that sort of unexpected energy. So the square that we had last month, and then this trine carries that forward. So where we had some tension before, it's now gone into the ease of the nice trine. It's really good. So yeah, if there's work you want to do with networks or any conversations or anything that you've been putting off, maybe that's a great day to go and like get that stuff done. Be supported in, like, I mean, Venus in Libra as well is very diplomatic in terms of navigating our way through those difficult conversations.
Yeah, and again, just pointing out that Saturn, like you had said, like pump is not the brakes are off a little bit with that Saturn, or it's a little bit more loose there, so it's not like holding back that Jupiter at this point as tightly as it has been. So that feels nice too. The less of like the heavy emotions, and again, like just being able to be lighter.
It really helps. So yeah, enjoy that day, make the most of it, I think. And then the big one, which is the first partial lunar eclipse. So the lunar eclipse comes when the moon is passing through the Earth shadow. So we usually have 2 lunar eclipses, 2 solar eclipses, and they come in pairs of a solar eclipse with a lunar eclipse in either order. So this time the lunar eclipse is coming first, and we see that it's at the time of a full moon. We've got the sun still in Virgo, and the moon is just over in Pisces there at 25 degrees. But the nodes, which is how we know it's a lunar eclipse, are still in Aries and Libra. So we've still got that energy of Aries and Libra, but the first taste of the Pisces, which will be the eclipses in the Pisces Virgo axis from 2025, 2026. I think when I looked, there's only like going to be 3 lunar eclipses. I don't think there's going to be solar eclipses. Got a little graphic. Can you see the animation? Does that work?
Yes, it's working.
So it just shows how the moon it's not totally eclipsed, it's just a partial. So maybe that'll mean it won't be as significant. For me personally, I'm thinking maybe it just pulls in where the node is an Aries energy plus a part of Pisces energy. But yeah, you can see from this graphic here that the sun's here, the earth is here, and the earth is in the sun's shadow, and the moon being opposite the sun is just caught on the edge of the earth's shadow, rather than being able to fully reflect the light of the sun, which we'd normally see with a full moon. Have I explained that?
Yeah, that's a nice way of showing it all. I like that.
I'll just run that animation again now that you can just see that shadow on the top left-hand side. We can see this is in the decan of deep sacrifice. And I was trying to find the Saros series because that gives us more information. And I've actually realised that I haven't got in my notes the actual number of the Saros series, so I'll have to drop that in the show description. But Saros series tell us how different eclipses are linked. And they tend to start and then each series will last for 12 to 15 centuries. So you get one series and it starts at one of the poles, either the North Pole or the South Pole, and it'll start as penumbral eclipses and then gradually get wider into like partial eclipses. And then when it reaches where it's circling the globe, that's when we'll see the total eclipses, right in the middle of that cycle of centuries. And then it'll start to shrink down again as it moves towards the other pole opposite to where it started. So that's why we see these different sizes, and that tells us something about where it is in that cycle. And then the actual series, they look at the astrology of the first one, so that when it first appeared at either pole, and that informs the interpretation of the whole series. And they can see those themes playing out then each time this Sarah series repeats. You see these themes, and Bernadette Brady interpreted this one as separation and loss, something to be parted from, to finish something with sadness. And she also warned that physical injury is possible through overexertion, so she warns to avoid strenuous activity. The series ends in 2962, so that's a date that we don't have to worry about for quite some time. It will be visible over the Americas, Europe and Africa, if you want to take a look. And it will be at its greatest, so the most visible, at about 2:44 a.m. in Universal Time. And it's number 52 of 73. And then we get a solar eclipse on October the 2nd. That's quite a lot of information. So then we can look at do you want to talk through the astrology of what we're actually looking at? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to look at what is co-present these now, because we've got Mercury there, co-present the Sun in Virgo, and then we have Saturn and Neptune co-present the Moon in Pisces. Neptune, it's no longer anaretic at this point, but it's, finishing up its time in Pisces, and that I feel like is just going to add a layer of confusion to the whole thing. It's within 3 degrees of the Moon. And it's right between the Moon and the node. So that feels like kind of important, or like that there's this, there's not going to be a lot of clarity. But then we also have Mercury co-present the Sun, which is maybe bringing the clarity, or like at least some communication about what's happening. Maybe it's communicating, but it's not actually clear yet. Or maybe it's communicating something that's more of an illusion happening around this time with Neptune there. Saturn, I feel like is just adding a weight to this too, with bringing up some limitations and, maybe echoing kind of what Brady said about needing to take it slow and be cautious in your body. Yeah, it's kind of dynamic with these extra planets in play. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thinking the same, like with that Neptune Sun opposition that will get fuller, but while they're sort of within that engagement, they're applying to each other. That can quite often be the most intense time. So that's really baked into the eclipse, that Neptunian quality. And like you say, Saturn as well is back on the stage because we've got Pluto in his sign. So it's really, there's a lot, it feels like. And like I say, it's kind of setting the themes for our Pisces eclipses. And it's like, okay, mutable signs, it's again Pisces, Virgo, Gemini and Sagittarius. It could be a time to just really settle into yourself. I mean, a lot of astrologers, we take things very easy on eclipse days. The ancients wouldn't go outdoors at all. They would stay indoors, and you don't have to be that restrictive. But I do confess to having a salt bath on those days and just letting the energy flow over you. It's not a day to start something. It's not a day to manifest, or some people do. Yeah, you got to be willing to know that you're not going to be in control of what comes out, because eclipses can be unpredictable. Chris Brennan says they're great endings and great beginnings. So particularly when you see the first one in what we know is going to be a series over a number of years, this isn't something that's going to begin on this day that you're going to instantly know what it's about. This is about a theme that's unfolding over those 2 years and possibly will go on to affect your life going forward, either a great ending or a great beginning. And of course, the two are intertwined. I mean, we see the nodes as like is it a lumisgate that Krista calls it, the infinity symbol, where it's that figure of eight because they travel and the energy travels endlessly between the two, because really one is too much and the other side is too much, and really you're trying to keep a balance but you can't because they're endlessly moving. So we're kind of sucked into this constant movement in our lives, but at the same time they help us find where we need to be. So things that leave our lives, usually it's time. Things do come to a natural end. Sometimes things have outstayed their time. We're clinging on to them for the wrong reasons, and that can be very hard sometimes. It can be a painful and uncomfortable experience. And sometimes also the new beginnings. I think I spoke before that one of our astrologers that we watch and learn from, Patrick Watson, met he hadn't met her before, but his stepdaughter was born on that day, but he didn't actually meet his future wife or his stepdaughter until years after the actual eclipse that is aspecting his chart that he thought would be significant. So that's an example of a way that it was only years after he realized what the significance of that eclipse actually was. And also we give all this information, but actually if it's not impacting your own personal chart, it may well be what our teacher calls a nothing burger, where nothing really comes up, you don't notice anything, and even if something does happen, you might not be aware of what it is. But I do keep a note in my journal of things that end and begin around this time, 2 or 3 weeks before, 2 or 3 weeks after, just so I know, and I can look back in 6 months, in a year, and just see if they've proved to be significant. And sometimes they are.
Yeah, I'm just looking up the dates of the last eclipses we had in Virgo and Pisces, and they started in September of 2015, September 12th, 2015. We had March 20th of 2015. There was a solar eclipse at 29 degrees Pisces, and they happened through 2016 and into 2017. So you could go back and look at pictures or your journal. It's really kind of cool to look back and see what was going on during that time, because it won't exactly repeat when we get back to those eclipses, but it might rhyme, or there might be similar threads that are continuing. Like for me, it's pretty obvious that September, the eclipse in Virgo was, I think, right around the time I signed a lease with my now husband for moving in together. So that's kind of cool to quickly be able to look at that. In these eclipses is when I became a mother, and it's like happening in first and seventh houses. So it's kind of, I'm just looking this up now, so it's kind of processing as I go, but
processing it in real time.
Yeah. So look at those houses for you and look at what was going on during those time periods. It's usually pretty obvious, like what some of the big stories were.
That's really helpful, Janessa. Thank you for sharing that as well.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. We've got the Deep Sacrifice card there from natal that again gives us, I don't know, does that relate to your themes of the sacrifice of being a mother? Yeah, I imagine things changed a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. We'll see what this one brings, but yeah.
Give your all, passionate quest, and martyrdom, the keywords that were given. And the astrologer Kira Reiberg calls it effort, and she's written a book on the decans, which is really handy and really informative because she pulls together all the sources. And Austin Coppock calls it bowl of blood. So he really goes for the full drama of,
Sounds like him.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, this is a Mars ruled decan. It's like at the very end, it's like almost the light and the dark are battling, and in Aries is where we see the sun take over. But this is the last ditch effort where Mars is really fully fighting to keep the darkness, I suppose. It's where the darkness has to surrender to the light. And we see the lovely kingfisher who's so set on pursuing this minnow that he's taking this really dangerous dive into shallow waters, but he's really going to risk it. The questions that were asked is it worth the risk? What sacrifice prompts us to consider what we're given, and to whom are we giving everything? What are we willing to make sacrifices for in favor of projects or a person? Sometimes those sacrifices can result in the happiest of endings, but be sure that you choose carefully, with the right recipient. when you're making these sacrifices, that you're not sacrificing in vain. Don't take these dangerous risks, Kingfisher. Yeah. Is it worth it? Was there any other thoughts you had on this lunation, on this eclipse?
No, I think we covered it.
Yeah. It's a lot to move into eclipse season is quite a thing. It's like the whole 2 weeks it's like a different kind of energy, isn't it? The time between, we then get 2 weeks before the next one, and it's like a time out of time somehow.
Yeah, it always feels energetically very strange. Like, what's going on? You'll notice in
Yeah.
our world, people are just a little, or, things happen, and not to be, fear mongering or, I don't know, scaring people about it. It's just kind of an odd, time moves at an odd pace or something.
Yeah, so it's just worth knowing and noticing those 2 weeks, and just see if you can feel that as well, and lean into it. Just relax. Don't push as hard as you normally would. Just surrender. Go with it is the best way to work with it. And that's the end of that week. We'll be back next week with the 18th to the 25th of September. Janessa, would you like to just remind everybody where to find you?
Yes, so you can find more info about me. You can book a reading with me at my website, byjoveastrology.com. And I also have a podcast where I share some of my thoughts and meet with other astrologers to talk about their astrological journeys over on at the _astro_ garden. Instagram is where I've got that info, but you can find that podcast on YouTube and anywhere else that you stream podcasts.
Fantastic, and I really recommend checking it out. It's really something quite special. And yeah, you can find me at celestiaastrology.com, and yeah, I do readings as well, astrology readings, offer the astral mindfulness, and we're both on Substack. You can find us both there as well and follow what we're writing about. So see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us for the weekly forecast. You often hear creators ask you, could you please like and subscribe? And I can't emphasize enough how important it is for small channels. It really does make the difference. And also, we all want to reach the audience that our content is made for. And we can do this with your help if you've enjoyed it. It gives us immediate feedback on what you're enjoying and what you would like more of. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's a great way for you to support our work and just let us know that you're enjoying what we're doing. So if you have enjoyed this content through to the end and you'd like us to keep making it and make more of it, that's a great way for you to let us know. So wherever you're watching this, please do give us a thumbs up and give us your support. And we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.